On this edition, I'm going to talk about Nick Diaz's recent comments about him having interest in returning to the UFC, going to court with the NSAC, and desiring to fight Anderson Silva upon return. Now, I think there's a couple of angles you could look at in regards to the Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz whole factor. But in regards to Nick Diaz going to court with the NSAC, this could either hurt or help Nick Diaz, and it could only speed up the process of getting him back into the octagon and fighting. So I guess it's something we're going to have to play by ear. I don't think the people surrounding Nick Diaz would have him pursue going to court with the NSAC if they didn't think he would be successful or have some form of success taking them to court. So it's something we're going to have to play by ear and let it pan out. In regards to Nick Diaz calling out Anderson Silva, now, I think there's two different ways you can look at this. There's the one side that you can look at in regards to the fact that Nick Diaz is a welterweight. He's fought a majority of his fights in his career at welterweight. He's also coming off of a loss. He's also coming off of suspension. He's still not even back from suspension just yet. However, he's trying to get a fight upon return back into the UFC against the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, the undefeated middleweight champion, Anderson Silva. But I think you have to look at the standpoint of the fact that he is coming off of a loss. He is suspended. He's looking to jump up to another division where the middleweight title picture, the top contender picture, is technically the way you could call it, is an absolute mess. Everybody's calling out everybody. There's specific matchups. There's a bunch of fighters in line waiting for the right to fight Anderson Silva. And there's a lot of guys that have earned their right to be considered a top contender. There's a lot of guys that have scratched and clawed their way to the top and are waiting to fight Anderson Silva. So for Nick Diaz to come in and get an immediate title shot over guys in a division that he's never even fought in, he's never even done a fight in, and get an immediate title shot, it would go against the integrity of not only the UFC but also the middleweight division. It just wouldn't be right. Okay, he has not earned his right to be the top contender and have the right to face Anderson Silva. I'm saying this as a Nick Diaz fan. I think the guy's an outstanding fighter, but for him to come in right away and get the title fight would not be right for the fighters that have been waiting in line, like the Michael Bispings, the Brian Stans, the Vitor Belforts, the Alan Belchers, Tim Bosch. The list goes on and on and on. And what would it say about the UFC if someone is to come in off suspension and off of a loss into a division they've never fought in the UFC before and get that immediate title fight? What would it say to the fighters that have worked their way up to the top? That's just, what would it be? So that's my perspective on it. I think, would the fight of Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz be a fight that people would want to see? Absolutely. But would it be right to the other middleweight top contenders? No, it wouldn't. So that's my perspective in regards to that. And the other way you can look at it is the fact that I think timing wasn't just a random timed thing for Nick Diaz's camp to come out and say that he desires to fight Anderson Silva. I think the timing was actually, this was actually planned, to be quite honest, is that it comes out at a timing where Anderson Silva's manager is saying that Weidman, Boach, and Belcher are all amateurs and don't have big names and aren't the pay-per-view draws, and it's a joke, quote-unquote, for them to be fighting Anderson Silva. And they're not big names. They're not a draw. And I think come to play, bringing all this into light is Silva's camp is looking for a fighter with a big name. And no discredit to all three of those fighters. I think they're outstanding fighters and they've worked very hard to get their title fights. But let's face it, love or hate Nick Diaz, the guy's a big name. Fans know what to expect from the guy. He always puts on entertaining fights. If you want to bring up the Carlos Condit there, the game plan had a lot of factor in that. So one fight wasn't entertaining. But you know what to get from Nick Diaz. He's going to show up, hopefully, but if he is to show up fight day and fight night, it's going to be an entertaining fight. He's going to bring it to Anderson Silva, whoever it be. So I think the entertainment value, I think if Nick Diaz and Anderson Silva was a card and was a main event on a card, the pay-per-view sales would be through the roof. The amount of people that would tune in to see these two guys fight, the trash talk and the fighting style of Nick Diaz, the outstanding level of mixed martial arts that Anderson Silva is, people would tune in to see it. Let's face it, whether you're pissed off come fight time that your fighter or favorite middleweight contender didn't get that fight, you'd still tune in and watch this fight, and the entertainment value would be through the roof. This is a fight that the UFC could market. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, Ed Soares actually came out recently and said that Diaz versus Silva, this is a pretty good fight. Let's see what the UFC has to say. So the fact that, I mean, it technically is cleared, quote unquote, by Ed Soares, perhaps Anderson Silva, it's now in the UFC's hands, and they could go two different ways. Do they give the immediate title shot to a person who has never fought in the middleweight division, or do they give it to a middleweight top contender, a person who has earned the title shot. So this is something that we're going to have to let pan out. So those are the two sides that I'm going to view as, coming from a Diaz fan, he technically hasn't earned the right to Anderson Silva, but also in the business standpoint is that Nick Diaz versus Silva is a card that would sell. That's the way it is. So the entertainment value would be there, but it also would go against the right to earn your way to a middleweight title shot. So that's why for this edition, it's Kyle Delaney signing off. I'm out of here.